Welcome to Season 1 of the PMO Community Podcast series. I'm Aina Alive, and today I'm excited to introduce you to Melicia Grant, a project management thought leader with over 15 years of experience in the insurance and financial services industries. Melicia holds a Master of Science in Computer-Based Management Information Systems from the University of the West Indies, and she is highly certified by the PMI Project Management Institute. Beyond her professional achievements, Melicia is passionate about mentoring aspiring project professionals and teaching project management courses as an adjunct professor. And in today's episode, we will dive into the emergence and significance of the Chief Project Officer role, a pivotal subject of Melicia's recent chapter contribution. We will cover the rise of the Chief Project Officer role and how it addresses the strategic needs of today's organizations, practical ways in which a CPO ensures strategic alignment across projects, and why this is critical for long-term success. Case studies from organizations like Bombardier and the Australian Government Department of Defence, where the CPO role transformed project outcomes. The benefits of implementing a CPO, such as improved resource allocation and risk management, and which of these benefits are most transformative. The challenges organizations face when adopting a CPO role and how they can overcome concerns of redundancy and overlap with other executive roles. So join us for an insightful conversation as Melicia shares her experiences, case studies, and forward-thinking perspectives on how the Chief Project Officer role is reshaping project management in organizations large and small. Hi, Melicia. Thank you for joining me today.
It's a pleasure being here, Aina. Thank you so much for having me.
It's a pleasure for me as well. So, Melicia, I'm so excited to jump into your chapter because you provided case studies and you were really passionate about the Chief Project Officer role. So, let's get it started with the rise of this role and provide some background for our audience. So, you describe how the CPO role emerged in the late 90s. What do you think has been the key factor driving the need for a dedicated CPO in today's organizations?
That's such a great question. And I think in response to that, the key factor driving the need for a CPU in today's organization is the increasing complexity and strategic importance of projects. As projects have evolved from operational activities to becoming more the primary vehicle for strategy execution, there is a need for executive level oversight to ensure that the project portfolios align with the company's strategic objectives. And this sort of shift reflects the growing recognition that the successful project management within an organization is critical for its success. And that I think necessitates the CPO role.
Thank you, Melicia. And I'm excited to pivot to the case study highlights because not all of our book contributors provided the case study. So you mentioned Bombardier and the Australian Government Department of Defence as organizations that have implemented the CPO role successfully. Can you share more details for our audience about how the CPO transformed project outcomes in these cases?
So I'm no expert in these case studies. However, I found them while I was researching as I collated my contribution for your book. And so I will keep this response quite succinct. I came across these case studies while I dug into researching cases that could validate and necessitate the CPO role taking space in the boardroom. What struck me about Bombardier and the Australian Government Department of Defense was that they created a space for this role and that they substantiated the presence of the role in their respective organizations. Take Bombardier Inc., for example. They introduced the CPO role in 2015 as part of a restructuring effort. And what that resulted in, Aina, was a 20% reduction of project delays and a 15% improvement in budget adherence. The CPO drove cross divisional collaboration and instilled a culture of project excellence, delivering value to stakeholders. And this is exactly what organizations can mirror, especially to justify why the CPO role is important. And this is valid given the data that's presented. Moreover, for the next case study that I had unpacked in the chapter, the Australian Government Department of Defense, what they did in 2016 was to create a CPO role, having received a review of its project management capabilities. The CPO's leadership led to a 30% increase in on time and on budget projects and a 26% rise in stakeholder satisfaction. So, from the two case studies, we see evidence of one, better project management through minimizing project delays, budget adherence, unscheduled projects, and with that 30% increase, you can see the stakeholder satisfaction being evident. So, as project management practitioners, we know the value of stakeholder management along with risk management to be critical to the success of project initiatives. And the cases that I got exposed to while I prepared and researched to write my chapter, it just really validated the case to have a CPO at the C-level executive area.
Yeah, I definitely hear lots of value and benefits of having a chief project officer for your organization. So I highly recommend to purchase this book, The Evolution of PMO, Rise of the Chief Project Officer, just to read Melicia's chapter. It would worth the purchasing the whole book. But let's maybe go to the dark side of each, so some challenges and drawbacks. So as we already figure out that there are many benefits, but you also highlight some challenges in adopting a CPO role, such as redundancy concerns, overlap with the other executive roles. So how can organizations overcome these challenges when considering a CPO position?
Okay, so in response to that, you've just in the question highlighted that one of the challenges is the perceived redundancy of the CPO role, especially in organization with established project management functions. To overcome this, I think organizations must ensure that the CPO's responsibilities are clearly defined and that they do not overlap with other executives, such as like the chief operating officer or the chief information officer. Additionally, there will be some sort of resistance to change and the financial investment required to establish the CPO position. So I believe that can be mitigated by demonstrating the long-term strategic value and cost savings associated with the project outcomes that will be improved on. So just as our organizations can invest in other C-level roles within the space, the CPO role as well shouldn't be excluded because we can validate the value, the strategic value over the long term that this role can add to the organization.
And as we already understood from the answer, even if there are some challenges and pushbacks regarding to this role, it's I wouldn't say easy, but it's possible to mitigate it and still make sure that this role is important and there is no threat for any other executive roles. And if we plan ahead of what are the responsibilities and benefits, we can also avoid redundancy with the other executive roles. So my takeaways, I see mainly benefits of this role, and I don't see like real threats. So, on this positive note, I would like to pivot to another important part of your chapter, Melissa, which is standardization of project management practices. So, Melissa, you emphasize that the importance of the CPO is standardizing project management methodologies. So, how does this standardization continue and contribute to better project outcomes across different industries?
This is such a tough question, and it is heavily opinionated. However, my response would be, and this is just a disclaimer as it's my personal view. So the CPO plays a crucial role in standardizing project management methodologies across the organization. And this standardization, what it leads to, or just journey with me for a moment, it leads to more predictable project outcomes. It leads to improved efficiency, and it set up that context for easier cross project comparisons, which contribute to better overall success rates. So, like the case studies of Bombardier Inc. and the Australian government Department of Defense that I cited in my chapter, in those industries such as the aerospace and defense, where standardization is critical, the CPO can ensure the consistency and adherence to best practices. Notably, this is not really restricted to such industries. Other industries and organizations can benefit from the standardization of project management practices, and the CPO role can help to streamline that. And that's as succinctly as I can put it.
Thank you, Melicia. And I'm also curious about the size of the organization. Would it be the same implementing the CPO role in smaller organizations? Because some argue that the CPO role might not be necessary for organizations having small size. So, what are your thoughts on this? And how can smaller companies adapt the CPO model to fit their needs?
Okay, so that's a great question. So while some argue that the CPO role is not necessary for smaller organization, the CPO model can be adapted. So for smaller companies, the function of the CPO can be distributed among existing roles, or a less formalized version of the CPO role can be introduced. And what that would ensure is that there is still strategic alignment without the need for perhaps a dedicated executive. And for smaller organization, we have to be very practical. So this allows smaller organization to benefit from the strategic project oversight while minimizing cost. So the the CPO role may not be explicitly seen as a part of the executive. The functions of the CPO role would be there in existing roles. It would be less formalized, as I had alluded to before. And the main thing is to ensure that that strategic alignment is evident. And once that is there, it is ideal. So basically, I'm saying with the CPO role in smaller organization, if they're tight for cash, if they don't have the monies to incorporate that role as in that of a larger organization, those were my suggested best practices to incorporate it. Or if they see the value add, just as though you have a CEO, just as though you have a CFO, the CPO role within that organization will still really build out on the strategic alignment that is required, and that really necessitates the role, the value add that we can get from the CPO role from a project management lens or perspective.
Yeah, and also from at least my personal perspective, role of like the CPO is going obviously with a strategy, but also aligning a lot with risks. And I'm curious, how does the CPO approach risk management? Is it differently compared to traditional project managers, or is it like the same way? And why is this role crucial for navigating risks at the enterprise-wide level?
All right, so I'm glad you asked that question and incorporated the enterprise-wide level aspect of the question, because the CPO approaches risk management, or should approach risk management at that enterprise level. And they can do that by implementing strategies that account for risks across the entire portfolio rather than at the individual project level. So that is such a critical distinguishing factor to point out. This broader perspective allows the CPO um, to identify risks that might not be apparent in individual projects and to allocate resources to mitigate those risks before they become significant issues, which is essential for organization operating in complex environments. So to unpack this further, uh, risk management at the enterprise level being overseen by the CPO will allow for visibility in identifying systematic or interconnected risks that may be overlooked by individual project managers. The leadership to make informed decisions on the overall risk profile of the organization, prioritizing the right projects while managing uncertainty is very important. Lastly, I'm envisioning the breaking down of silos as well as risks are being managed holistically at the enterprise level. And that is how I see the CPO's approach to risk management being completely different than the traditional project managers who look at risk more at that individual project level, in comparison to the CPO who will see risk management more at that enterprise-wide level.
And that was very inspiring, Melicia. I hope more and more organizations will hear about our podcast and our voting for this role, and read our book and understand the importance of this role. And also, thank you all for tuning in to the PMO Community Podcast for this enlightening discussion with Melicia Grant. A special thanks to our volunteers at the PMO Community Podcast for making this episode possible. And stay tuned for more captivating insights and interviews in our upcoming episodes. And don't forget to follow us on social media to stay updated. If you find this episode valuable, please remember to like and share it. Feel free to reach out to me, Aina Alive, on LinkedIn with any questions or requests. And for all of the latest updates, make sure to follow us on our social media, such as the PMO Community LinkedIn page, Podbean, Spotify, Amazon Music, Samsung, and Apple Podcast. Stay tuned.